Welcome back to Higher Density Living. We were doing Ayn Rand, thought we were going to do a part 2. Then we said, fuck it, scrap it, see you later. She said enough that needed to be said. Very truthful, right on the money.
We're going to do more of those, though.
Maybe. No, I'm just kidding. We will.
We've got to get into objectivism.
Yeah, we got to get, I like that a lot.
And they line up, and how they line up so perfectly with creational laws. That's what I love. And if you don't understand creational laws, you need to go back. We've done 7, I think it's 7-part series so far. We still have more to do, but we've done 7-part series on creational laws. And whenever you begin to understand how nature works and you see these laws, this reality, then now you can look at stuff like Ayn Rand that had a negative perspective, and you're like, this is like, for me, I was over the weekend, I began to read it, and I was like, this is totally different than I you know what, I thought she was some radical, crazy, capitalist, just make a bunch of money and screw people. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's
how everybody else interpreted it. You want to know why? Because they talked about Ayn Rand in a film. It was referenced in a Wall Street film. That's the problem.
That's the problem, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then everybody views it like politicians and stuff like, oh, I love Atlas Shrugged. That's me, and I'm going to, I'm going to enjoy capitalism and pillage the earth.
Yeah. Clueless.
So let's get into
dingus. I call them dinguses.
Our Orion Group.
Oh yeah, Orion Group Part 2.
I think we've done 3 or 4, and we're doing another one today.
Yeah, this is just our latest post on higherdensityliving.com, but we have multiple of these. So go ahead, check it out on there. If you don't want to watch the whole episode, if you just want to read about it briefly before you listen to us yap, you can go on the website.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, and we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So if you don't want to watch us, and you don't want to look at my ugly mug, I'm more than happy to just listen to us. Yeah, and most of you do that anyways.
I don't brush my hair. You don't want to look at me either.
Let's get into the Orion Group with UFO craft specifically.
Ooh, with UFO sightings?
Yes.
This is fun. People like UFOs. I like UFOs. So in the Law 1, there was Session 8, January 26, 1981.
So we're going back to the 80s.
Guys, this is 40 years ago. Incredible. The questioner, Don or Dan, I don't know why I always forget his name. Not really that important.
It's the material, not the questioner.
Yeah, that's delicious.
Yes.
8.2 questioner. There was a portion of the material yesterday, and we talked about the material, the questions that they were asking Ra, which I will read, where you say there is a certain amount of landing taking place. And it's funny, it's not landings, like one is on its own. It's just the action of landing, which I think is quite interesting how they descriptively say that without the S, the plural. Some of these landings, plural, are of your peoples. Wait a minute. Our government? Our people? Our black ops groups or whatever they are, they're the ones doing a majority of these? They're the vast majority of UFOs we see in the sky? That's going to bum some people out.
Well, we have the SR-71 behind us. This is a prime example. That was all created in the 1940s and 50s.
With a slide roll.
And if you look at it now, it still looks like something Batman would have.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And so imagine what they have now that we don't know about. The craft we have now. That's what they're talking about.
This is what they're talking about. And it says, some are of the entities known to you as the group of Orion. And you guys know that from listening to our series. Dan or Don, crap, I can't remember his name. My first question is, what did you mean by the landings are of your peoples? He's like, Rod, what are you talking about? Guys, group, what do you mean? Our people, explain that. Ra says, I am Ra. Okay, so that's just again for everybody. That's a clarification to say that this is in fact the entity. And
because this becomes important later down the road.
Negatively oriented entities won't tell you their names.
Yeah, exactly.
They won't state it every single time.
So if you're sleeping and you have an alien come visit you, and they're not giving their name to you,
that's a problem.
You have a problem.
You have a huge problem. If there's no identification of nature, if they don't respect your free will in that moment, there's an issue. So, Ra continues, your peoples have at this time-space present. So time-space is different than space-time. It's just talking about this point in history, this moment. All right? The technological achievement. So in January 26, 1981, our peoples, human beings, have the technological achievement if you would call it that, of being able to create and fly the shape and type of craft known to you as unidentified flying objects. Our peoples, governments, or non-governmental black budget groups were already making this stuff. They're already flying these things around. They already had anti-gravity devices.
Well, you also have to. This explains a lot because, and you're gonna love this. If this is 1983, whatever, and a craft crashes, and we run to Panama or whatever, and the Americans, we grab this craft, right? The Special Ops grabs this craft.
Yep.
And whether it be whatever, NSA or whatever it may be, whoever it is, and we know that this craft is from another government, we're going to want to study it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
It's a crashed...
If this came from China or Russia...
It's a crashed government craft, not a crashed alien craft.
Right. Yeah, but we're going to want it even more. Because to reverse engineer that technology, now we're like, oh, okay, the Russians did this. We didn't. And we know that with Hitler, with the craft that they invented these craft.
Der Glocken.
Yeah.
The Bell. He did a great job with it.
Mm-hmm.
You had a toroidal mercury core that they put a huge voltage charge through.
Because and this explains it too, because if you let's say the United States grabs that craft and that craft came from Russia, let's just say, well, obviously the craft's technology could be alien in the sense of an Orion Group person or entity. They have free will too. I mean, they're the same as us. You know what I mean? So could have been instrumental in helping the Russians get that technology.
Yes.
So it could have alien technology in the craft, and thus we want it. But that craft the origin of that craft
has a higher probability of being a terrestrial built craft.
Yes, there we go.
Made by terrestrial man.
This brings so much clarity to this situation.
Yeah, it's really, it's quite frankly wonderful to hear all this is talked about. So Raw continues. You nailed it. I honestly don't have to even make a comment on what you said. That's it. This is excellent. Unfortunately, which is strange. Unfortunately.
Raw's using the word unfortunately.
And that that's got to be bad news.
Yes.
Then. Unfortunately, for the social memory complex vibratory rate of your people. So where we are in the vibrational patterns of our thoughts and evolution.
That's why this is so big.
These devices are not intended for the service of mankind. This is where he said, unfortunately. It's not really for service.
The MIC, Military Industrial Complex.
Yeah, that's right. But for the potential destructive use of mankind. That sucks.
Mm-hmm.
You're hiding all this technology, doing all this stuff. You got all this great technology, and you're only doing it for the destruction of one another. That blows.
Mm-hmm.
That's lame. That's 1981. It's probably only gotten worse. This further muddles. Muddle's a great word. I love breaking this stuff down. The word choice is exquisite.
Yes.
You know when you go to a bar and you order a drink? I don't know if you listen to this, if you're old enough. They put the leaves and stuff on the bottom. Maybe it's a mojito.
Right.
The bartender is going to muddle it. He's going to take pressure and friction and a sharp end of thing, and he's just going to smash it down there. He's going to destroy its nice structure. And he's going to muddle it to like squeeze the energy and the juice out of it.
Well, and this is Orion Group too. It creates confusion.
Well, here we go. This further muddles the vibratory nexus. And the nexus is this energetic joining. Okay, it's these things that are coming together of your social memory complex, causing a situation whereby neither those oriented towards serving others nor those oriented towards serving self can gain the energy/power which opens the gate to intelligent infinity for the social memory complex. So he's saying this, they're crushing each other together. All these groups, there's no proper distinction. It's just a mix of all these atrocious energies, and it lacks balance, equilibrium, evolutive thought. And because that, it limits the full collectives group, their ability to evolve to the next density. They cannot harvest to that next point.
No, because they're worried about control, power, and obtaining that through these borders. So they're taking energy, which is money, which is taxes, and they're turning around and using it to create weapons of destruction.
Yeah. And, I didn't even know this was in here. It's amazing when I go back to this. In 8.3, we did an episode on this about I talked about this legitimate story about an individual associated with, and the undersea base at in the Bahamas. There's literally a thing right here. I didn't even know this was in here. 8.3. They're talking about bases of our people, these groups, and it says there are bases. The bases are varied. There are bases, as you would call them, undersea in your southern waters near the Bahamas. There are.
This was 1980. What?
This is 1981.
Yeah.
You ready for this? There are bases, as you would call them, undersea in southern waters near the Bahamas, as well in your Pacific seas in various places close to your Chilean borders on the water. There are bases upon your moon, as you call this satellite, which are at this time being reworked. Our terrestrial peoples are reworking and rebuilding moon bases in 1981.
Well, we said this. We did a whole moon base thing.
I know, Stanley Cooper would be drooling over this.
Mm-hmm.
There are bases which move about your lands. What the heck does that even mean? There are bases which move about your lands? What is? I don't even understand what that means. What is it? Think about it. Okay, let's stretch our minds.
No. I think if they've tapped into interdimensions, then you could have an interdimensional base.
Oh gosh,
I knew this part was in here. That's why I wanted to wait, because I knew that story with that you told me. So, but I had to get.
Dude. I got goosebumps. That's what I'm ready for this. You ready for this next line? There are bases. This is even cooler than the moon for me.
Yeah.
There are bases. If you would call them that,
Mm-hmm.
in your skies. What the fuck? They're just floating around?
Well, that's what. This is. And I'm being hypothetical here, and we need to study this more. But this is what I'm thinking. If the Orion Group has, because a certain percentage of the population is Orion Group, they said it's a small percentage. But if these Orion Group are trying to disseminate negativity, and obviously they're all about power and taking free will, why would you not team up with a Hitler or a military industrial complex or these shadow workers, and then give them technology and then allow them to be able to?
That's like the Sunday with.
Well, I mean, this is like so weird, like John Kerry, and we're going to get into the whole Antarctic base, but John Kerry, the last day of him being in office, he has to fly to Antarctica and go to a base. It's like, why?
What are you doing down there?
Why would you make that your last day of your thing?
The trip?
Why is that so important? And why is the Antarctica being so? And there's sheets of ice and you have underwater. But when you get into this aspect of it, is there these interdimensional? Have we gone? CERN has seen this.
Well, I talked about this. Remember in that previous episode with that gentleman? He said the reason I'm vaccinated against everything is because we do time travel.
Mm-hmm.
We move through dimensions of time. And I can't bring a virus like COVID back to the 1400s. That would be a problem.
So this was happening in the 1980s. So, this was 40 years ago. So now we have these bases, which I'm saying, and I may be wrong, but I'm thinking that they're interdimensional bases where we have these.
I don't doubt that.
Where we have these, because we know when we went into in the earth, under the earth and the earth's core and all that, that there is actual a different group of peoples that have been an ancient group of people that have been living a long time. So this makes perfect sense to me.
It doesn't seem illogical at all.
Yeah, what's that? What's the TV show where they have the big circle and opens up and they go in a different dimension?
Stargate SG-1.
Yeah. This seems like this is that.
Yeah,
to me.
And this is and that was in the early 2000s. Stargate
Mm-hmm.
was 20 years late for this.
Mm-hmm.
Final sentence from 8.3. These are the bases of your peoples. No extraterrestrials, nothing else. These are human beings. Bahamas, moon, sky, under the earth, interdimensional, all that stuff. Very numerous and, as we have said, potentially destructive. That sucks.
Yeah, but think about it. Why are you worried? Area 51. Okay, focus on that. That's fine. Focus on the Colorado airport.
They want you to stare at it.
Because we actually have a base that moves around on land. That's so crazy.
Oh boy.
So when we get into these UFO and these crafts, and you have another section that you want to read out of Raw, I think it's important because he gets into a little bit later. He gets into detail on what, and this will help you if you see some people. I think are more susceptible to seeing craft than others. I don't know if it's just because of their genetic, as far as because we all have alien DNA in us. I mean, we all are. I mean, we're basically aliens to the earth.
That's correct.
I mean, yeah. So whether you have more extra, I mean, it would be nice if 23andMe would tell us instead of saying that we're, I have a lot of Neanderthal in me, but
I got a big old brow.
But it would be nice if they'd say, if they could have the DNA sequence patterns of aliens and then turn around and say, oh, you have 22%. And maybe this is my theory. Maybe because we have whoever has more, that there's a vibrational influence, because obviously they're opening up a dimension for you to be able to see that craft in that moment.
Dude, that's
and
they don't have to be seen.
No, if they're higher intelligence than we are, even if they're 5, 4 or 5, that's hundreds of millions of years more evolved than are. And they can be in a negative, Orion can be in a negative sense.
Why not?
Be highly evolved.
Yeah. Why not?
1/6, we all merge together, but density. But if they're a 4 or 5 negative oriented, this is super simple. This explains it to me. I don't see an issue, but it allows you, when you see crafts, to be able to define if it's negative oriented or positive in the next section.
Yeah, and that's
gives a
when we're
definition
going
of
to get into 12. So
Love this.
Let me hop over. So if you are open to this in your mind and you do spot something, let's talk about the probability of that thing being a negatively oriented craft. Okay. So, questioner, thank you. He says, continuing with the previous session, you, Ra, mentioned that the Orion Crusaders came here in chariots. Could you, Ra, describe a chariot? Ra, I am Ra. The term chariot is a term used in warfare among your people. Think about that. Why do they describe them as chariots? Because the machines we've created, this technology, is only for warfare. If it was for something else, they wouldn't call it a chariot.
Mm-hmm.
The context is phenomenal with this. Ross says, that is its significance. That's why we use the word chariot, because you're only using this craft and technology for warfare.
Well, it's so interesting that he used the word chariot too, because this collective consciousness Ra would know exactly what our view. I mean, we have a lot of mystical teachings, BC that mention, the Bible has chariots coming from the sky.
So what is it telling you immediately?
Yes.
Wait
exactly,
a minute.
Yep.
We got a lot of Orion stuff going on in the Bible.
Yes.
This is phenomenal. The shape of the Orion craft is one of the following: : firstly, the elongated ovoid shape, which is of a darker nature than silver, but which has a metallic appearance if seen in the light. Okay, so the first shape you want to spot if it's Orion with a high probability is that it's going to look like kind of like a cigar with a fat center. Does that make sense?
And how many cigar-shaped UFOs have people seen?
So many. Isn't it funny that the ones that are seen happen to be the ones that are coined as a negatively oriented?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. This gets better. In the absence of light, so in the darkness, it appears to be red or fiery in some manner. Let's go back to the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It talked about fiery chariots in the sky.
Yes.
Let's go back to the Vedic scripts. Fiery chariots in the sky. Okay? This is everywhere.
And we're basing religion off of this.
Let's go to the Mayans. Fiery chariots in the sky. Right? Let's go to Africa. Okay? Let's talk about or let's go to Iran. Fiery chariots in the sky. Sumeria, all the stuff. You name it. Every single time.
Well, I love the significance of a chariot, because especially when you look in Roman time, and they invented, they have, the Roman, that 700-800 years that the Roman Empire was so amazing. And I was reading an article the other day, and they were talking about the engineering of chariots and how they began to, because it came to the point where if the engineering is not proper, if something goes wrong with the chariot, you die.
Yes, that's correct.
So, getting it geared, making sure, the wheels, and then you had production value and everything else. So, but a chariot is solely used, not just for transportation, but it's used, like you had said, in war.
That's all it's for. It's a war machine.
Yes.
It's not a serve mankind machine.
No.
You know what I mean?
It's not service others.
And this is
service itself.
This is a fantastic differential too when you start looking at the craft of the Billy Meyer material. All of them are the polar opposite of this. They are bright. They are beautiful. At night, they shine gold.
Yes.
They're not fiery. They're not red. Okay? They're these beautiful discs.
Yeah, and during the day, there's silver and metallic.
They're silver and bright.
Yes.
And they're used to move through time. They're not used to hurt anybody. They're used for studying, specifically stated. That's incredible. So it's like, okay, so depending on the thing I'm looking at, its shape and its energetic output can tell me whether or not it might be negatively oriented. So here we go. Let's continue. Other craft include disc-shaped objects of a small nature, approximately 12 feet. That's got to be a drone. We're not shoving human beings in that. Because right now we're talking about terrestrial Orion craft.
Right.
Okay, it's got to be some sort of drone.
It can have a
12 foot. That's what the
a collective thought could, and I think they talk about that, but it's operated by collective thought. So you don't need a life form in the craft.
Why? Who cares?
Yeah. Well, you were just in Socorro.
Yeah.
Wasn't there? Let's look at that. This will be interesting. The Socorro, because a police officer, I think, in Socorro, this was in the 1950s, saw 2 or 3 aliens, and the craft crashed. It was a UFO crash.
It was the Lonnie Zamora incident.
Yeah, I wonder what. How did he describe the craft?
Alleged UFO sighting that occurred on April 24th, 1964, near Socorro, New Mexico, when the Socorro police, Lonnie Zamora, claimed he saw 2 people beside a shiny object that later rose into the air, accompanied by a roaring flame. This is, so let's get into how this thing
I wonder if he has details on it. I know it
here we
burnt the
go.
ground around him.
5:45 p.m. It was an egg-shaped craft. Interesting. And the way they have drawn it makes it look like cigar-shaped with a fat center. Ovoid. Right?
And so in the 1960s, what was happening in New Mexico?
Oh, the 1960s?
Why would Orion be here?
Well, let's consider what's going on. We got the Cold War, right?
Yes.
And we have all the national labs here in New Mexico. Why wouldn't you want to hang out where all the nuclear technology, Department of Energy, all that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all here.
So the leading technology of energy is happening here. And we have Orion Group here.
Yeah. So seems like a hot spot.
Yes.
Right? So then let's continue. Okay. The box-like shape, approximately 40 feet to a side in your measurement. Isn't that amazing? 40 feet across.
A box.
It's the shape of
cube.
a box floating around. Okay. Other craft can take on a desired shape through the use of thought control mechanisms. So I'll just make it turn into whatever shape I want. Could be a hologram. Who knows? There are various civilization complexes which work within this group, the one of thought. Some are more able to use intelligent infinity than others. Creational laws, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, truth, peace, harmony. The information is very seldom shared. This is quite interesting. This is an interesting statement. We're going to talk about this for a second. Therefore, the chariots vary greatly in shape and appearance. What does that mean to you?
It's seldom shared. So
seldom shared.
If I have a negative orientation and I'm all about, even here with humanity, we do this. And I want the technology that I create, I want it to be for my group.
Now, what if you're positively oriented? Well, why would you not share it?
Because I would. If I was positively oriented, I would be afraid of who would get that information, and then they would be able to further their technology.
All right. So
there's this thought.
Yeah. So let's drop back into section 8 again. You ready for this? After they talked about the bases, in 8.6, it says, how did the United States learn of the technology to build these bases? I am Ra. There is a mind-body-spirit complex known to your people by the vibratory sound complex, Nikola. Oh, Nikola Tesla. That's really interesting. This entity departed the illusion and the papers containing the necessary understanding were taken by the mind-body-spirit complexes serving your security of national divisional complex. National divisional. There's nothing unified about it.
No.
Thus, your people become privy to the basic technology. In the case of those mind-body-spirit complexes, which you call Russians, the technology was given from one of the Confederation in an attempt, and this is why the positively oriented do not share this technology anymore, was given one of the form of the Confederation in an attempt approximately 27 years ago to share information and bring about peace among your peoples. The entities giving this information were in error. But we did many things at that end of this cycle in an attempt to aid your harvest, which we learned from the folly of certain types of aid. What they found is that we are not ready for that technology. No. So even if you have it, even if you are so benevolent, it's not appropriate to share it. And that's why this is seldom shared, whether you're positive or negative. Because these things happen. They come at a time when you're evolved to use them.
But let's not blame the Russians. If we'd have got this information
has nothing
in
to
the
do with
United
the
States,
Russians.
we would have done the same exact thing.
It makes no difference.
Yeah.
It makes no difference. And so we just find them immensely interesting. So if you're out there, you spot something, just be aware. Okay, so this is the UFO scout episode. So if you're scouting these things, realize that it's probably your own military. It's probably negatively oriented. Okay, so don't get all hyped and amped up when you see a UFO. You're probably getting scammed by your own military.
I love it. This makes it so clear.
Sound good? All right, peace.